Here in this video we will talk about the various powers of the Nazgûl and also of certain specific powers of the Witch King of Angmar, the greatest of the nine. So to begin this topic, let's talk a bit on their origins first. Introduced as the Ringwraiths and the Black Riders, these fell entities were the chief lieutenants of the Dark Lord Sauron in the latter part of the Second Age and then after the year 1050 of the Third Age. They were mortal men who had been turned into wraiths by their 9 rings of power. To mortals, the Nazgûl appeared as shadowy men hidden by black hoods and cloaks that reached down to their boots. Without them, without their cloaks, they were shapeless and invisible to all but the wearer of the One Ring, and also to certain elves who have the light of Valinor in them, for these elves also were able to dwell in both the seen and the unseen realms of Arda. These Nazgûl were the commanders of the armies of Mordor, of Dol Guldur and all of the fell kingdoms that followed Sauron. So with that introduction out of the way, let's take a look at their powers. Number 1. Longevity by the Rings of Power. So as was said in the premise of the Lord of the Rings, 9 of these rings of power were given to the race of men who above all desire power. These rings were created by Sauron during the Second Age when he was under the guise of Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. These rings were given to selected men with a weakness for power and the same ones that had a jealousy for the immortality of the elves. Thus by these rings they were bound to the One and to Sauron, and for thousands of years they would linger in Middle-earth, performing the evil deeds under the command of their Dark Lord. By the end of the War of the Ring, the Nazgûl would have been around 3000 to 4500 years old. Number 2. Enhanced strength and endurance. The Ringwraiths as they were then were no more mortal men confined by physical weaknesses. They were beyond that. They had the ability to ride non-stop from Mordor, traveling through the realms of Gondor and the Lost Kingdom of Arnor till they reached the Shire, and continued to chase down Frodo till reaching the forts of Bruinen near Rivendell. As the most powerful servants of the Dark Lord, their combat prowess would indeed be top-notch as well, as it was said that the 9 Nazgûl together would be a great threat to both Aragorn and Glorfindel combined. And for your information, Aragorn is a Dunedain, and Glorfindel had once killed a Balrog, so that goes to show the level of danger that they bring to the table. Tied to the life force of Sauron, they would also be able to shrug off most attacks that would kill any elf, man or dwarf, such as being swept away by the torrent of the river and then travel back to Mordor in the same period of time. This fact was due to their spirit form, and that physical force was only effective against their cloaks, which gave them form, and without the clothing, they would become formless again and had to return to Sauron. Number 3. Invisibility and Wraith forms. The Nazgûl are said to be primarily existing in the Wraith world, which is a part of the unseen world like a realm of the spirits. They needed their cloaks to manifest in a tangible form when interacting with the living. When their disguises were destroyed, they had to return to Sauron for replacements, since they require specific cloaks to house their essence. In the world of light, the Nazgûl had poor vision, but could sense the presence of other beings, especially in the darkness. They could detect living creatures by the scent of their blood and were drawn to the power of the One Ring. They could perceive beings with a presence in the Wraith world as well, such as the Ring-bearer, as well as certain powerful elves like Glorfindel who could control the unseen. Those who could see into the Wraith world also could see the Nazgûl, as Frodo did on Weathertop when he wore the One Ring. Otherwise, they are just shapeless and without form. Number 4. Fear-inducing screams. So as Tolkien wrote in letter 210, their peril is almost entirely due to the unreasoning fear which they inspire, much like ghosts. Their cries strike terror into the hearts of even the bravest, causing them to cower as the Ringwraiths pass overhead. Even when they could not be seen or heard, their terrible presence could be felt, and those nearby will feel a sense of dread. So as you can see, when facing one in battle, or merely encountering one, even the brave would have chills down their spine and be frozen still like deer in headlights. With such kind of dread, most mortals would be cut down due to their lack of action and fear. Number 5. The Black Breath. The Black Breath, also called the Black Shadow, was the primary power of all the Nazgûl. It was a severe and often fatal condition resulting from contact with one of these Ringwraiths. It wasn't the actual breath of the wraiths, but rather an aura they had produced to incapacitate their enemies. This power was extensively used in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, but lesser in form during their encounters with Frodo and his companions in Eriador. In a milder form, it could induce brief unconsciousness, accompanied by unsettling dreams and agitation upon waking. The affliction could also cause victims to fall into a deep, unrecoverable sleep, with murmurs in their sleep until a grey shadow will fall over their face as they succumb into darkness. In one instance, after the Witch King led Sauron's attack on Osgiliath, rumors of this black shadow spread even to Eriador, and even Gandalf felt a sense of dread. Number 6. The control of the Felbeasts. What was most iconic for the Nazgûl is of course as riders of the Felbeasts. These are known as the Black Wings, the Hellhawks, and the Nazgûl birds. These Felbeasts are winged creatures of Mordor ridden by the Nazgûl after losing their black horses in the fort of Bruinen. These creatures were described as being able to fly at great speeds. Although bird-like in form, they were much larger and more monstrous, displaying many reptilian features. Their color was pitch dark, and they appeared shadowy even in darkness. Sauron granted the Nazgûl power and dominion over these creatures, which served as their steeds in the later stages of the War of the Ring. With these flying beasts, the Nazgûl could travel long distances, patrol the borders of Mordor, and wield greater power in battle, enhancing their command over Sauron's vast forces. Number 7. Necromancy. The Nazgûl also had certain necromancy powers, especially with respect to the wraiths. These were creatures of darkness akin to wraiths, but lesser in power. They inhabited the shadowy areas of Eriador, such as the Barrow Downs. They took on the form of dark specters with cold, glowing eyes and a chilling, captivating voice. The Barrow Wraiths first appeared in the Barrow Downs after the Dunedain of Cardolan were decimated by the Great Plague. Around 1409 of the Third Age, many of these malevolent spirits were sent by the Witch King of Angmar to haunt the region of Eriador with an aim of thwarting the Dunedain from resettling and recreating the realm of Arnor. It was in one of these regions that Frodo Baggins and his company, which means Sam, Merry and Pippin from the Shire, fell into the clutches of these wraiths while traversing the locale known as the Barrow Downs. They were ensnared in what was believed to be the tomb of Cardolan's last prince, and they were only freed with the help of Tom Bombadil. Number 8. The usage of Morgul knives. The Morgul knife was a short blade wielded by the Witch King of Angmar during the Third Age, and was also said to be wielded by the other Nazgûl as well. It was one of these blades that the Witch King used to stab Frodo Baggins in the ancient tower of Amon Sul on Weathertop Hill, the same that was seen in the movies. These blades were enchanted, remaining in the wound of the victim and transforming them into a wraith, which would soundly be under the control of the Nazgûl. As explained by Elrond, the purpose of the knife was to break off in the wound, leaving a shard in the victim's body, and then the remaining blade would turn to dust, but the shard works its way through the body into the heart. If the shard of the blade stays in the victim for too long, the victim becomes a wraith. So even when saved from damnation, such a wound would never be truly healed, and will persist till death. Frodo's wound would always cause him an illness and the anniversary of his attack every year until he was healed in Valinor. Now these are the specific powers of the Witch King. The first is invulnerability to weapons. The Witch King of Angmar was invulnerable to conventional weaponry. All blades trying to pierce his body would shatter and the wielder would be severely poisoned. It was said that this poison was worse than a direct hit from his mace and was not easily treated, for it was more of an evil taint than an ordinary venom. Merry's weapon, the one that he wielded in the Pelennor fields, was made by Númenorian armorers who had some powers that we would call magic. And Tolkien writes that this weapon had been made in Arnor when Arnor's greatest enemy was the Witch King, and the smith had attempted to create a weapon that would be able to harm the Ringwraiths. Tolkien writes that when Merry stabbed the Nazgûl, the spells that held the sinews together were broken. When Merry stabbed the Witch King, unbeknownst to him, he broke the spell binding the Nazgûl to Ardor, which then rendered him vulnerable to other attacks. In that moment, Eowyn, with the last drop of strength that she had, thrusted her sword in where would be the Witch King's face, effectively slaying the Lord of the Nazgûl. Now the prophecy would be fatefully fulfilled, since the Ringwraith was slain by a woman and a hobbit and not a man. As a result of this feat, though, they were both grievously poisoned and in near-death state until Aragorn healed them. For he said, "Long have I stood by them, and at first they spoke much in their dreaming, before they sank into the deadly darkness." The second one is sorcery over the weather. The Witch King also had some sort of weather-controlling powers akin to that of Saruman, and this is coupled with an ability to summon lightning strikes. There is an excerpt from Return of the King, Book 5, Chapter 4, in the Siege of Gondor. Then the Black Captain rose in his stirrups and cried aloud in a dreadful voice, speaking in some forgotten tongue words of power and terror to rend both heart and stone. Thrice he cried, thrice the great ram boomed, and suddenly upon the last stroke the gate of Gondor broke. As if stricken by some blasting spell, it burst asunder. There was a flash of searing lightning, and the doors tumbled in riven fragments to the ground. So what was just said was straight from the book, and it shows the thunder and lightning powers wielded by the Witch King. In an earlier exploit during his reign as the ruler of Angmar, he was able to summon a blizzard that sunk the Teleran ships that was sent by Círdan to come to aid to King Arvedui. So this ability was also what the lesser men of Forrodwaith also had to contend with, which was snow and frost. And then he had also fire sorcery. So lastly he had some sort of pyromancy skills, which means fire sorcery. In the same book it was said that the Black Rider flung back his hood, and behold, he had a kingly crown, and yet upon no head visible was it set. The red fires shone between it, and the mantled shoulders vast and dark. From a mouth unseen there came a deadly laughter.
Old fool,
he said to Gandalf.
old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it? Die now, and curse in vain.
And with that he lifted high his sword, and flames ran down the blade. Gandalf did not move, and in that very moment, away behind in some courtyard of the city, a cock crowed. Shrill and clear he crowed, recking nothing of a wizardry of war, welcoming only the morning, and that in the sky far above, the shadows of death was coming with the dawn. As you can see in this excerpt, just as in the movie, the Witch King summoned the fire upon his blade, but unlike in the movie, he did not break Gandalf's staff. He was not riding a fell beast, but he was on a horse, and he was in the gates, not on top of the upper levels. Yet the battle between the black and the white was foiled by the coming of the riders of Rohan. So those are all the 11 powers and horrors of the Nazgûl, the Ringwraiths of Sauron. So, if you like this video, then watch this other one as well, and do check out our channel for other monster content. We might just have things you haven't seen before. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.